In this hour, in our entrepreneurial feature, you'll remember that for almost a year now, in fact, maybe just a little over a year, Andisa Ramavhunga and I, Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting, have been talking about how we use strategy to make sure that our business value proposition finds real manifestation. We've touched on a number of issues around the issue of vision, of leadership, of culture, of operations, innovation. And all of those ideas have been handled, each one by itself in silos. And the idea tonight is to try and bring all of those ideas together in a way that is going to make the idea around strategic management of our organizations, of our businesses, make sense. Because here's the thing, we don't want to be intellectual gurus alone. We want to be able to apply the things that we talk about in our businesses so that our businesses can actually function properly. We have a guest tonight, and Andisa will introduce him as we have this conversation. You remember that a few weeks ago I was speaking about the intra-Africa trade agreement and how it's very, very important for us to get to the place where we can start to trade with each other as countries on the African continent. I think that the dimension that is going to be brought into this conversation is precisely that. How do we start to connect with each other's countries on the African continent from a strategic point of view? And my other guest is here. He's already here in studio with me. But Andisa, good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Are you good?
Thank you, Aubrey. It's always a pleasure to be here. I can't wait for this Tuesday session.
Absolutely. So we've been at pains to try and explain why it's important to be strategic in the way that we approach our business ventures. And there is a very powerful understanding that very often, especially for people in smaller businesses, in more subsistence type businesses, that one is trying to make a living.
Yeah.
But the fundamental thrust of our conversation has been to say that we need to not only understand the flair, artistic side of business alone, but also to understand the science of business in order for us to be anticipatory, to be able to be innovative, to be able to understand what are some of the tried and tested ideas that have made businesses successful. Yeah. Tonight we round all of that stuff up, I imagine, as we talk about understanding strategic management in organizations.
Yeah, so there's a question you always ask me, Aubrey, and it's been bugging me for a long time.
Living rent-free in your mind.
Yeah, you keep on saying, so at what point does an entrepreneur think about these things? If you remember when you had a conversation around value proposition design and how do you create that market solution market fit, and to say, at what point do entrepreneurs think about this thing? When it comes back to building systems and systems that allows us to scale, you ask me again, at what point do you entrepreneurs think about these things? So tonight we're talking exactly that. It's a strategy as one of the capabilities within an organization, which is a system like any other organizational capability, similar to marketing, operations, finance. By the way, strategy could be a function within an organization, and it's got its own systems and process and people and tools and methodologies that will then dictate when you start thinking about stuff and at what point and what sort of rhythm do you create for yourself. Yeah.
You remember that the reason why I'd been asking that specific question is because most people who go into entrepreneurship usually go into entrepreneurship because of subsistence reasons. It's not somebody that woke up and said, this is going to be my calling, this is going to be my vocation. Many of us usually end up in entrepreneurship by chance, by happenstance, even by mistake. And that's why I was asking that question. At which point do we start thinking about these? Because these are the kinds of questions that would, in normal circumstances, be thought of by somebody who is a deliberate business person or an entrepreneur. So you're saying to me that you should be thinking about this all the time.
All the time, well, at periodic points in time. But it also helps to have, again, what I call an operating rhythm to when you do it. The question is, you most of the time, as you've mentioned, we are just caught up in operations, serving our clients, probably owning our value proposition, but it's worthy of a time to take a step back and plan your business, receive that feedback, and go on and realign all those myriad of components of business systems that we've spoken about. So today is to talk about the people aspect of it, who must get involved in strategy. There's the process aspect of it, which I call the operating rhythm. At what point, in which day, in which month, how often, at what time, how long, and again talk about what I call the tools. What should that dialogue sound like? What are those questions you must ask that are not obviously burdensome to your daily rhythm of operations? So today we talk and try to assess all this. And by the way, again, there are frameworks that are lovely that I'd like us to actually start debating and talking about.
We have a guest, though, tonight.
Yeah. In fact, we're very fortunate. This is a brother of mine. He came, in fact, he landed, I think, Vakang, you wrote me an SMS on Sunday or Monday. That is landed. I did not have a clue that I'd have an opportunity to invite me. So he hits me up today to say, are you going to studio? Can I join you? I say, Vakang, by all means. So this is Vakang Puteho. I always punt Stanford Seed in this show, which are one of what I call the programs, breakthrough programs. And I use the word breakthrough deliberately because I guess I was one of the participants. And having had the opportunity to attend the program, I call it a breakthrough because once you go through that program as an entrepreneur and as a business operator, your mind is never again the same on business. And a lot of these concepts, by the way, these guys at Stanford Seed, they've perfected the art of it, whether it's strategy, it's operating models, it's finance, it's marketing. They've just got this way of what do you the word you not damify it but calm it down.
Make it relatable. Make it relatable. Yes.
Yeah, so that it's easy for entrepreneurs to understand and more importantly practicalize. But I'd love to hear him introduce himself and introduce Stanford Seed. What is it that they do? What they do in South Africa? How do people reach them? For those who are fortunate, what sort of goodies do they have for them?
Thank you so much, my brother, for coming. We appreciate it. Tell us a little bit more about Stanford Seed and what you guys do there.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and good evening to all your listeners. My name is Bakang Putero, and I serve as the Stanford Seed Network Manager for Southern Africa. So Stanford Seed is a program under the Graduate School of Business in Stanford. So it's an accelerator program. I like how Andisa says it's like a breakthrough program, but it's an accelerator program for 10 months. What we do is we help businesses in emerging markets transform and scale. We use the Stanford source, the same tools that are used in Silicon Valley, but we have adapted them for emerging markets. Because obviously Silicon Valley, Africa, South Asia, different markets. So we've taken a bit of some of the best business tools from the Graduate School of Business, tailor-made them for entrepreneurs, and allow entrepreneurs to actually use those tools to transform and to scale. So we work in West Africa, we work in East Africa, we work in Southern Africa, we work also in South Asia, and we also are now breaking into Indonesia. We're very excited about that. We have a cohort of 44 companies there in Indonesia. So look, the program has been quite a success, started by a Stanford alum who, the fundamental thing is end of the cycle of global poverty.
Right.
What we know is, and we should know this by now, development of any economy is driven by SMEs. SMEs are the key drivers.
Oh yeah.
It goes without saying.
Yeah.
Right. So what do we believe in? We believe that if we are able to scale enterprises like Ntiyiso Consultancy, if we're able to scale enterprise in Africa, we will see a shift where government is not playing a big role in the economy, but entrepreneurs, SMEs are playing a big role in the economy. So we've invested in this program so much. We've seen the results, impeccable results. We have more than 1,000 entrepreneurs who've been part of the program. From an impact perspective, 40% of the companies that do the program report increase in revenues. 45% of businesses do business with one another. 40% again of businesses that go through the program go back and raise capital. So some of the issues that you actually discuss on the show, the Stanford program in that 10-month accelerator tries to do that. But there's our difference between ourselves and any other program. Our value proposition is in the network of Stanford, right? We know that the value proposition, how do entrepreneurs do business? They network with each other.
Right.
You meet someone and you're like, hey, I have a good business idea.
Yes.
And then you start that relationship there. So it's not academic. It's as practical as it could possibly be. So once these companies finish the program, we attach Stanford consultants, Stanford coaches, and Stanford interns to support the businesses post the program. And then we do lots of peer-to-peer learnings. We do summits where Stanford faculty fly into a region and teach exactly what Andisa talking about. Teach strategy and make it so practical. Current topics that are happening in the world. We really dumbify it and we teach it as practical as possible for entrepreneurs. Yeah, and we can see the results. I mean,
yeah. I wanted to ask Bakang, because you're right to say that we do need to make these concepts, these business concepts, a lot more relatable and therefore usable.
Yeah. That
they don't just stay in our minds as banked cerebral currency, right?
Yeah.
These ideas must ultimately find real expression in the real world, right?
Correct.
But as an academic organization, as a school, an American-based school, right? What do you find to be some of the challenges for businesses on the African continent and more specifically in the SADC region?
Correct.
That speak to the issue of understanding strategy?
I mean, I like this question because we've had a whole discussion around this. If you think about an entrepreneur, let's say in sub-Saharan Africa, right? What do they have? They have a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Right? They found the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? I've seen it, identified an opportunity in the market. I want to go after it. That's where the idea starts from. Structurally, do you have a business model? Do you have the team to help you deliver that? I don't want to use strategy, that product.
Right.
Like a successful product.
Right.
Do you also have just the business knowledge of what a strategy is? How do you scale? How do you manage your finance? How do you manage your cash flow? So what you notice, we are still, I always say entrepreneurship in Southern Africa is still at an infancy stage because it's not as developed as you may think, by the way.
Sure.
If you think about our education system, the exposure of entrepreneurship, most entrepreneurs are first generation entrepreneurs in Africa, competing with fourth, sixth generation entrepreneurs in the rest of the world. And the exposure level is different. So you'll notice that the basic fundamentals of just how do you run a successful business, how do you scale a business is where we start, right? You realize that access to market is how does this product get into another market and compete successfully? So that's what we go back and try to do from a Stanford perspective. And the fundamental question, I liked what Andisa was saying earlier on, simple value proposition, right? What differentiates this brand from another brand in another jurisdiction? Can an entrepreneur articulate that?
Yeah.
Not just him alone, by the way, because we sometimes put entrepreneurs at the forefront. Can the organization itself say, this is our value proposition? If you ask the frontline officer, what's the value proposition of your product? Yeah. Can everybody in the organization buy into that vision to achieve it? So it's not this, how do you guys put it, like a one-man show. We don't look at it as a one-man show. We want to scale the entrepreneur and his management team to be able to deliver the value that they believe that they're delivering. So these are some of the challenges that happen, So, sometimes we celebrate like an entrepreneur and we're like, this is the best guy in the game, but his team has to also be as great as he is. So that's what Stanford does.
And I think, Andisa, that's really the conversation tonight. Right?
Yeah.
How do we make ourselves so familiar with our strategy, given the different operational tasks of different individuals within the organization?
Yes.
Very often I hear people speak about, that person does or is involved in strategic roles, is not operational. Talk to me about that. I mean, at which point does somebody not become operational? Even the strategy of a business is part of the operations of the business, I would imagine. Talk to me about that difference.
And then you're right, spot on, Aubrey, where you can't actually, I think there's a very subtle line between strategy and operation, and there are ways that people undertake strategy, and I think we need to demystify it, where strategy has now been made to be a competence of a few, and then you delegate strategic execution. I don't want to.
It usually sounds to me like it's the people that just don't do anything.
Yeah,
sit around somewhere, do nothing.
They're locked in the ivory tower, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're wearing very good suits and speaking big English and in sitting in boardrooms. Defining plans that they will never ever see again. There's probably a number of consultants. Again, it's very much numbers driven, and it's very much a stylish part of the world of business, right? But I think the world has moved on, and there's various schools of thought that says, there's this book that I read. In fact, funny enough, I learned it from one of the professor in Stanford, called The 1 Hour Strategy by Jaron Crouchbrink. It's called a 1 hour strategy, by the way, because you can read it in 1 hour and get to understand and by the way, because I'm a practitioner, I tend to be very careful with words, but forgive me for now. I'll use the word called strategic planning, but you remember I said it's a rubbish word for lack of a better word, because strategy and planning are two different things. But there's a science and a process to strategic planning, and when we spoke systematization at some point in time, and we were talking about how you create systems within an organization, thinking of marketing as a capability, but it's a system that's made up of process, people, and technology, but what I would call tools and methods that help you at least execute much better that capability. Strategy is exactly that. One of the skills of thought is who gets involved in strategy. I see there's quite a lot of thinking that says we need to democratize strategy, and there's a reason why that's the case, and I'll come make a point of it. So strategy is for everyone. So best practice companies or companies that have made that breakthrough, they tend to make strategy everyone's responsibility. Right, so everyone is
from
involved.
CEO to janitor?
From CEO to janitor. From CEO to janitor. And we'll come back to say how do they do that. They also have a process, what I call an operating rhythm. So there's the school of thought that says you go in once a year, you have a strategic planning session, you talk, you craft plans, you come back, and more often than not, those plans don't see the light of the day. But for those at least that transcend, or that are able to at least go to what I call a level 1 maturity, they do what we call dissemination of strategy, which is, if you think about it, it's just communication. And more often than not, they have a challenge of what we call buy-in. And that strategy tends to not to stick within an organization. And you'll see that's on the other end of the scale. On what I call best practice, on the other, and I don't want to use left and right. Hey, I'm into politics a lot now. I must be careful how I use who's on the left, who's on the right. But just indulge me for practical purposes. Let's say on the right scale of things, people who infuse strategy, who follow this process that says strategy is for everyone, and they follow a rhythm around how you set strategy, how you make strategy. A discourse for everyone within an organization, and then obviously then support that with a framework and tools that allows for those conversations to happen. So one of the, at least the point I'm trying to make is that strategy is not an event. I think companies that fail dismally, and we've seen those that go past, they treat strategy as an event.
Explain that.
As an event. So we do a hoo-ha. There's a strategic planning session once.
Mission, vision.
Yeah, once a year, right? Yeah. And for those, again, there'll be those who go away once every, and by the way, some of us are guilty. We're coming from that school of thought where we'll do once a year, and then every three months, a few of us will get together and again review.
The leadership.
Yeah, the leadership is away on a getaway to review that. And by the way, I'm not saying these are wrong. I'm saying that at least that capability and that knowledge, that know-how has evolved. And people have tried different things and found to say, what is that magic formula that works? You'll tend to see that people are moving away from those once-off event type of a systems of strategy formulation and execution, and are moving into what I call a continuous process. Okay, others will call it a discrete process for those who do chemistry and physics. And again, I fail because that's how my training is like. But I'm saying it's a continuous process because it permeates our everyday discourse within an organization in various levels, obviously, and I call it an operating rhythm because obviously we can't all of us think about strategy every day. At some point we need to go and operate and go to markets and sell and make our products. But I call it an operating rhythm because you do need to develop a certain cadence around having a strategic discourse within an organization and allowing everyone to have that a conversation. And I break it into two because maybe a part of me that's old school says you do need to have what I call a strategic planning cycle, and it's traditional. It's got some of what you spoke about mission, vision, and values, if you remember. But there's also the strategic cycle has a component of what I call an external analysis. And by the way, we've spoken around this, looking at the macro environment, doing an industry analysis and understanding the dynamics within the in industry and some of the consumer trends and customer shifts. And then you come back to do the internal analysis, which was, by the way, very much numbers based, right? That says how much have I made in terms of revenue, how much did I sell? But I'm arguing that internal component is a lot of what Bakang was speaking about, is the business modeling aspect of it, that analysis, the operating model aspect of it. By the way, these are concepts we've unpacked in a lot of great detail. I guess today is saying how do we tie them together and not maybe discuss them in separate. But again, our listeners, if they want to go back to those conversations, we have unpacked what the business model is, those 9 building blocks. The operating model, I think, has got another 6-7 building blocks, and you can unpack what the value proposition is. It's got, I think, another 3 or 4 building blocks. But the internal analysis is about understanding how you're creating value internally. And I guess that's what I'm talking about when I say develop a cadence that gets people to start talking about the organization. One of the things that Kreisbrink says in his book in 1 Hour Strategy, which I loved a lot, by the way, and it's stuff that I'm trying to get in the organization. He calls it a 1 hour rule, simply because he says everyone in an organization must spend an hour talking strategy, but the frequency differs. An example, an executive or leaders or founders must spend at least an hour a day having a strategic review. And if you are an executive manager, maybe you must spend an hour a week having a strategic discourse. And if you're a normal worker, you must at least spend an hour a month externalizing and understanding what the strategy means. And by the way, there are a lot of tools that allows you to do that. So
is that the rhythm that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the rhythm that
I'm say that the leadership, hour a day,
yes,
management, hour a week. The rest, I suppose,
that's
of the operational stuff is would that be the rhythm?
That's the rhythm of it. That's the cadence.
So when you say rhythm, you're actually speaking to frequency.
The frequency,
per rung in the organization, with which they need to be engaging the idea of strategy.
Yes, yes. And remember, I said there's people. The element is that everyone must be involved in strategy. Obviously, they might look at different components of strategy. Other people would look at the corporate. Others are looking at one aspect of the business, a subsidiary or an operating company. Others are looking at a function. Others are looking at a product line. But there must be some strategy.
Let me ask the direct question. I'm almost comfortable to say that I understand what the founders and the top leadership of that company might be preoccupied with in terms of talking about strategy. What is the janitor worrying about? What is the issue that the janitor or the guy who makes sure that there's enough paper in the copying machine, what's he preoccupied with when thinking about strategy?
I'll make it practical.
Yeah.
Let's say we in a commodity business and we want to, our strategy is becoming a low cost deliver of stuff.
Right.
The person who buys pen must think about the cost of that pen on a frequent basis. So he must maybe he's buying pens every day, right? But once a month he needs to sit back and saying, but actually, am I getting the cheapest pen that is out there?
He would have had to have bought into the idea that our business strategy, our value proposition to the market, is to provide our commodity to the market on the basis of price.
Yeah.
So everything that the guy who buys pens, ink for the printer, he must be preoccupied with how do I
get the cheapest,
because the strategy of the organization,
it's a low cost strategy,
is about bringing whatever product or service to the market on the basis of price.
Absolutely. If it's superior customer service.
Can I weigh in on that one? Let me give you a good example with what you said about a janitor.
Yeah.
So one organization in the UK was restructuring, new strategy.
Yeah.
And so obviously what they do is, the new CEO comes in and says, I'm laying off workers.
Yes.
And then he starts to lay off the very delivery guy who is delivering this laundry.
Right.
Right? When he lays off this guy, his customers say, hey, do you understand how friendly this guy is when he talks to us? Customer service.
Yeah.
Right? You want to be the best in your organization. At a strategic level, it makes sense, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But remember, that guy who is your immediate contact to your client is delivering your strategy with superior customer service.
Absolutely.
And this guy's a guy who's smiling to your client.
Yeah.
Who's saying, how's your daughter, playing with your daughter?
He's the guy that actually practices
in its practicality.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with what Andisa is saying. The strategy is all round.
I got to pay the rent, guys.
Yeah.
It's starting to get exciting. Please give us a call, 011-883-0702, as the idea of the dissemination of the strategic goals of the organization becomes clearer to me. I'm hoping that it's becoming clearer to you. What is the strategy that you have chosen your organization to represent in the market? Is it price? Is it superior service? Does everybody in the organization understand what role they play in the practicalization of that strategy?
Absolutely.
Give us a call, 011-883-0702. When I come back, my guests, Bakang Putego, Southern Africa Network Coordinator for Stanford Seed, and of course, Andisa Ramavhunga, Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting.
Entrepreneurship
on 702.
My guests, Andisa Ramavhunga, Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting, and Bakang Putego, Southern African Network Coordinator at Stanford Seed. We're talking about strategy and how we make it permeate throughout all the personnel, all of the, I suppose, spaces in your business. Are you aware that the security guard at the gate of your business could win or lose a huge deal for you if that person isn't part of the strategic mindset of your organization? Give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. 011-883-0702. And this, it really, the penny dropped for me when you made that example to say how the strategy of the organization must permeate even to the lowliest, the most humble of positions in that organization. And I get it. How do we make sure that the rhythms that you spoke of touch everybody in the right frequencies and the right intensities in order for even the lowliest individual in that organization to express the strategy of the organization?
So like any other capability, you need a governance framework to ensure that it happens. And I'll give you an example in this book again that I read. It's a mythical company in that 1 hour strategy. There, without fail, organizations every Monday morning from 8 to 9, everyone should be in their office looking at some, I call them tools methodology, answering a certain questions around strategy. So it's hived off. No, everyone knows that on a Monday we can never set a meeting at 8:00 because that's the hour that the executive is looking at strategy.
Becomes part of the culture.
And the process and requirements of the job.
Yeah.
And by the way, you need to have artifacts, right, to come back. That's why I'm saying it's governance. It's like a quality control of a product. You don't just release a product out there and hope that it works. It's got some certain artifacts that proves that the product was tested, it meets certain criteria. Meeting governance on strategy should exactly be like that. Part of your weekly submissions to your bosses are around your cadence on strategy and their frameworks. I started getting into them. Remember, I said to you how you create that system is 3 ways. One is people, and it's everyone, and everyone plays a different role at a certain point in time. The second part is the cadence. And the cadence, I split it into two. I'm still a believer of that once off where you just, as management, you just take a breather and look at the business and make sense of everything else, and maybe get time to get some external feedback, particularly on some of the macro things that are changing, because trends don't shift every day, although I would argue that you need to track them regularly and feedback into the loop and into value proposition design, how you're servicing your clients, how you're delivering the value proposition, your operation. So you need to infuse that learning back. Some of the macro things, you can do them once every three. I mean, there can only be so many times that interest rates are changing. By the way, there's the school of thought. If you, I think I did introduce it, which is a branch of strategy called scenario planning, which you have to keep those key driving forces, which are the macro things that have really the biggest impact in your business. Somebody must keep tab of those things. I would say monitor them regularly, and unless there's obviously some emergencies that we are seeing that are moving. For example, the pandemic. You can't wait every 3 months to come back.
Yeah.
As things are moving, you just have to call somebody in. But the cadence on that is probably you need to do that, I would say at least once every 3 months. But there's then the stuff around the internal of the business, which is around market facing, the business model stuff. That one you have to create a cadence of 1 hour a week, a day a week, a month.
I want to come back to the rationale behind those cadences. Please give us a call, 011-883-0702. Any questions, any insights that you might have about how do you make sure that the strategy, the logic of your business for its existence is understood by everybody in the organization, so that whatever operational responsibility they have reflects the understanding of that strategy. Please give us a call, 011-883-0702. Bakang, I'm interested to find out from you, as somebody who watches business trends not only in Botswana, but throughout the SADC region. What are some of the biggest impediments to strategic grasp by organizations, particularly organizations that are at the first generation level, as you said earlier on? What are some of those things that folks aren't thinking about that they ought to be thinking about at a strategic level?
Yeah, I think fundamentally it's like, where are we going?
Yeah.
Right? What type of businesses are we, let me use the word incubating, and for what particular purpose are we doing that, right? So if you think about why is it difficult, and I can use this context, right? Why is it difficult for a black-owned business to list? If you just think about that, in the context of Southern Africa, most companies that list are possibly outside our region. They are also not your maybe mostly indigenous people, because the entrepreneur has never had a case study of, you can, like what you see in Silicon Valley. Actually, let me use a good example of what you see in Silicon Valley, especially in this current generation, right? You see a kid start a business today, 6 months is listed, multi-billion dollar business, flooded in the whole world knows this is X entrepreneur has made $1 billion. But if you come back, we talk about where a business wants to see itself in 10 years, listing sometimes is not even part of that.
Yeah. So is it issues of compliance, do you think? Is it issues of we talk about strategy right now. Is it that we haven't yet thought deeply enough and scientifically enough about how we express our businesses in terms of that strategy?
Yeah, it just goes back to when that business starts, what's the structure of it? Yeah, as I said again, we are still first generation entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
The guys,
we just want to put food on the table.
Yeah, we just want to honestly, honestly, we just want to put food on the table. If you look at our support programs, actually, our support programs are not yet so mature enough to raise multi-billion rand, multi-billion pula, or if it's Namibian dollars type of businesses. If you think about Strive Masiwa and his experience in Zimbabwe, that's not an ecosystem that wanted to create the one of the richest men in the world. It was a system that said, "I think we think you've made enough."
Yeah.
You ought to stop here. But that's not the opportunities that are available in SADC. We have 600 million people, by the way. SADC alone, 600 million plus people. So the strategy to me, it always says, if we're going to build long-lasting, strong businesses, how do we start allowing entrepreneurs to think that way?
Let me ask you while you're there, because you're exciting me. Should our strategies be based on, I want to be a player regionally in SADC, and then walk my strategy back? Or do I start with the practicalities of where I find myself as a subsistence business owner? I'm selling magwenya, and I move from there, but I try to lock into the opportunity of 600 million people. What should be the order by which I develop strategy for my business?
Absolutely fantastic. And actually, we do this in Stanford, right? Where you are now is great.
Right.
But we will stretch you with something that we call a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
It has to be part of, you're selling fat cakes, right?
Yeah.
The market for fat cakes is, I'm just using numbers.
Right.
Let's say in your particular township, 50 million rands.
Yep.
Right? Okay, mama, how do we move you from making 10,000 rands to 1 million rands with this fat cake? That's where it starts. Right.
So how do we make you start thinking and behaving like a person that is worthy of 1 million rand of that 50 million rand share?
Exactly. And now here it is, right? Have I'm assuming you've bought fat cakes before.
I do it all the time.
Right, all the time. but watch. There's a particular lady, or a man,
absolutely,
that you buy fat cakes from.
Yeah.
There's a sauce.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a hidden ingredient somewhere there, or maybe a service.
Yeah.
How does she replicate that? And that's what we call scaling now. Does she have the competence to understand that, number one, you can scale? That's where subsistence starts. Subsistence says to you, nah, I'm going to stop here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. When we think about the challenges of entrepreneurs with strategy, is this enough? Yeah, it's 10,000 rands enough? Maybe my son will go to school, take over the business. Maybe we'll stop fat cakes altogether. Or is there actually a value proposition in that?
Andisa, it brings me back to the question that says, how do I even, I don't know what I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Most of us at the level of entrepreneurship, particularly subsistence entrepreneurship, don't even know that there are such ways of thinking. We don't even know. We have no idea that there's this book that you've been quoting now, the different rhythms of, where do I start to ignite the process of being somebody who starts thinking strategically in the way that you've described tonight?
So I would say, if you're an entrepreneur currently and you have no business plan, that's a very good place to
really
start. Yeah. If you're operating a business, and remember business plan, and we've had this conversation before, a lot of people do a business plan because they want to access funding. And of course it is a requirement for that, but there's a bigger purpose for a business plan, is to help you think about your business. And the moment you start getting into the science of putting together a business plan. That's the one that will then push you now to this arena of strategic planning, right? Where you have to think about the business model, you have to think about the operating model. I mean, one of the things what we did when we came to Seed was exactly that. They give you, what do they call, a business model canvas, and it's all those building blocks. But before you start putting that business model canvas, there's the vision part, by the way. The first thing we did when we came in there was to craft our mission. There's the what do I call this? The seduction of just putting in fancy words that mean nothing.
Yeah.
Because you think they are sellable.
Yeah.
But the mission is much more than that, and you start to realize that it's
to move seamlessly.
Yeah. So, and you'll realize once you get again into the science of defining your mission that it is actually about purpose. You need to be clear what change you want to see, which is probably the visioning part. But what is your role, or what is your mission in effecting that change? And you need to quickly come and break that down into 3-year plans, 3-year strategic goals, 5-year strategic goals, and even the future. I mean, this is the stuff, when I relate it back now to some of the literature that's there. Roger Martin calls it, you know, when he says you have not had a strategy until you answer 5 questions. One of the first ones, he says, what are your winning aspirations? What is it? And this is exactly what Obakang. So is your job to do Tengisa Makunya I-10 a week, or is your job to dominate Amakunya business in Soweto, or dominate Amakunya business in South Africa, or dominate Amakunya business in the world? And by the way, what does your back end, this is now coming to the scaling element, to dominate Amakunya in your neighborhood is probably easy because you need to bake, right? But if you want to dominate Amakunya in South Africa, you can imagine that you have 2 choices. It's either now you're running these big factories of manufacturing Amakunya, or you decide, look, I'm going to franchise and just sell that secret sauce. And again, now you're starting to think about the best way to say, okay, do I want to franchise? Is it the good way for me?
That thinking is the strategic
That's
thinking.
the strategic element.
I've got quite a few calls.
How do you then grow and scale? And if you are going to dominate it in the world, I mean, are you still in the Guinya building business?
Absolutely. Let's take some calls. Muketli is in Kyalami. Hi, Muketli.
Hi, Bobby.
Sure.
Thank you for the beautiful show.
Thank you, sir.
There's a quote that says, to affect 1 million, you must impact 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to build scalable businesses, or to build strategic businesses or future plans, one should invest in being exposed. And especially in South Africa, we've got a challenge where the aspirations of building big businesses are limited to a number of people and families, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
So,
oh man, I've lost Muketli. Can we please get Muketli back, please, there, Teddy? Joy is in Lenasia. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Aubrey. How you and your guests are doing?
Very good, thanks.
Thanks for the beautiful show, as always.
Yes, ma'am.
Aubrey, I just want to ask your guests for a little bit of advice, okay? I started a muffin business about 3 months ago.
Yes.
All right. So I live out in Lenasia, so I try to find a spot where there's cars coming and going.
Yes.
Okay. So I push my trolley, I put up my umbrella, I put up my signboards, but nobody pays attention. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, and I sit there from 9 o'clock till 5:30, and I don't sell anything.
Great question, Joy. I love.
And that is my only income because I'm a pensioner. But I mean, they don't even come to me and ask me what I'm selling.
Yeah. So what can you do to attract more eyes, more feet to your business?
I've got banners.
Yeah.
I've got banners. I've got boards. I've got a chalkboard. I've got things flying there. But nobody takes notice.
Let me ask you this question, Joy, because I think from a strategic conversation that we're having, what do you want to do? What is, in your mind, what is Joy's muffin business supposed to do?
It's a brand muffin and it's all different flavors. I want them to buy, to support me.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Joy,
I want them to come up to to me and ask me, what am I selling?
I hear you.
But they think I'm invisible.
Let's hear what the experts have to say. Joy in Lenasia. Much appreciated. Let me quickly take this one. Martin in Parkview. Martin, hi.
Bro,
Yeah.
it's been forever.
Hey, Martin, what's happening, bruh?
I'm very well.
Good to hear your voice, man. It has been a long time. Your thoughts?
Yes, it has been. So as you know, I'm an engineer of sorts.
Yeah.
I've just recently come back from Rwanda, an investment conference for sports-based entrepreneurs, right? And your guests, what's the description of what the course they would do for budding entrepreneurs, right? Rings true. It rings. Yeah, I mean, I'm even getting flashbacks. Right?
Yeah.
We entrepreneurs in Southern Africa don't get exposed to this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And because we don't, we are already operating from a really enclosed,
sure.
yeah. And we only see South Africa. We only see Gauteng. We only see Maikasi, Johannesburg.
Yeah.
We only see, my hood, Parktown, right? But what we forget, and I think the forgetting isn't because we know and we forget. The forgetting is because we haven't been exposed. The gentleman who's speaking, my prayer, my ask, my plea, if you could take what you are doing onto the road and make it accessible to
Martin, I'm going to stop you there because I want to get his response. But I think we get the gist of what Martin, Joy is saying. But please speak to Joy. I think Mukwetli's sentiments were quite clear that you've got to have the right mindsets in order for you to be the person who attracts the kinds of business that you're looking for. But Martin, Joy, what does Joy do to get more people to buy her muffins?
Hey, Joy's question is a conundrum, right?
Yeah.
Because a client's not buying is feedback. And it could be feedback to say maybe you're in the wrong spot, or it could be feedback that if you sell something different, maybe there might be a bite in it. But I guess the fundamental question that Joy needs to probably ask herself, it's what value am I creating and for who? Remember, it's easy to, and I guess we all fall into this, in particularly in subsistence, where I have skills in painting, and all I want to do is go around painting everyone's houses. But when everyone comes and say, "But no, I don't need painting," it's immaterial. She has to find. Talk to those people, and I don't know what the circumstances are to get some feedback. Why are you not buying? Maybe those people are in transit. It's just maybe not the right spot. But everyone wants a guinya in there. But maybe people will be happy to get a cup of coffee, or maybe sell them coffee, give them a guinya for free, but price it in. Again, I'm not that entrepreneur with the source, but I guess my biggest pushback to her, she really has to understand what value is she creating for who, because for the moment that people are not biting into that, it means that they do not see value in what she is doing.
You obviously need to take this on the road, as you heard from.
That's why we have Bakang here. You and I, we've been
take this on
We've
the
got
road.
I call it a bank of these podcast, mini podcasts that you and I have done now for the last 2 years, where we discuss each and everything or element of these things.
Bakang, my brother, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really, really appreciate it. We've run out of time, but I hope that you come back again. Let's talk.
Yeah,
Let's talk about how we do connect with businesses all over the continent. I think it's a big opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, your listeners gave me homework, right?
Yeah.
how do you expose them? So something to think about.
Magang Butejo,
Thank you so
Southern
much.
Africa Network Coordinator at Stanford Seed, and of course Andisa Ramavhunga, Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.